High on Life is a game that, despite not actually being a licensed game, for me falls into the same category of the South Park RPGs, because those perfectly capture the spirit, atmosphere and humor of the series they are based on. If you don't know what I'm talking about, the game's developer Squanch Games was founded in 2016 by the former Epic Games executive producer Tanya Watson and Justin Roiland, who used to be the co-producer of Rick and Morty. And while this is not a Rick and Morty game, its influence is as obvious as it can be, with the over-the-top humor, in some cases violence, and even the same voice actors. And High on Life also hasn't been the studio's first game. That was the VR title Accounting, that was developed with the help of the Stanley Parable creator. Their first title that wasn't necessarily VR-oriented, despite still being playable that way, was Trover Saves the Universe, which is also the last title before High on Life became a thing. And while the studio's first-person shooter, when it comes to the music and graphics, isn't going to be remembered as a groundbreaking experience, the almost cartoonish art style and some of the goofy sound effects still do a fantastic job underlining the ironic and comedic tone of the game. And where High on Life definitely shines is in the gameplay department. During your playthrough, you will mostly spend your time traversing different planets, looking for your bounties or taking part in shootouts with different types of aliens. The traversal part of the gameplay impressed and surprised me with how deep it was, and that throughout almost the entire game. Your arsenal of tools to get around always gets expanded, like getting new upgrades for your suit, the jetpack, a dash module or magnetic boots for example. On top of that, every weapon you collect, with the exception of the last, will give you an ability like a bubble slowing down time or a shootable disc as a temporary platform that will be used to overcome a new type of obstacle in one way or another, which is further expanded by the combat sections. Here, you will have to overcome chaotic shootouts with bigger and more G3 members, ranging from small basic mobs to huge abominations that can take you out quite fast if you don't keep your distance. On top of that, you will also encounter less intelligent alien life forms that are more like animals but will still try to harm you. And the highlight, while always chaotic, are the challenging and creative boss fights, with my absolute favorite being the penultimate, but more on that in the story part. To overcome those challenges, you will require an arsenal of so-called Gatlians, alien creatures with the ability of firearms. Throughout the story, mostly after boss fights, you will get a new addition ranging from the basic handgun Kenny to guys like Creature who can shoot little monsters that attack on their own. And all of this, in combination with the minigames, like a section where you have to do paperwork, breaking the game loop, creates an experience that rarely becomes stale during the around 10 hours it takes to finish. Now before we come to the story section, I want to give you the chance to skip to the timestamp shown on the screen right now. The game begins with the main character playing an old school shooter resembling the likes of classics like Doom. Afterwards, our sister tells us that she's going to a house party because our parents are out of town. She then enjoys some Colombian nose refreshments from her mirror and offers us some as well. Here we then can select what our character is going to look like, before we are able to move around freely in our house, until we get asked to follow our sister outside where the alien cartel called the G3 spawns and starts attacking humanity to smoke them as a drug. We get our first gun-shaped alien called Gatlians, whose name is Kenny. From here we fight our way through G3 members to get an alien device and bring it back home. Said device is then combined with our microwave, which is then able to warp our house to the alien metropolis called Blimp City. Here, according to Kenny, we are looking for a legendary bounty hunter named Gene. We find Gene relatively quick, as he sleeps with his remaining belongings on a nearby bench, looking like the shell of the man he used to be. He offers to help after noticing we own a house, but because of his body not being in the shape to fight the G3 himself, we are supposed to do that with his guidance, and as a first step, he asks us to try on his old bounty hunter suit. The suit fits, but apparently its license needs to be renewed, which we are supposed to do in a nearby pawn shop. We head there, clicking away ad pop-ups along the way. Inside, we get the license from the owner, Mr. Keep. With the suit ready to go, we head back home where Gene set up the Bounty 5000 that lets us track, complete and teleport to targets. But before we try going after the big guys, we get sent to take out a local gangster named Ninetalk, to get used to the business and to find Gene's favorite knife. She's supposed to be in the slums, so we head down there, and after getting rid of some of Ninetalk's minions, we get our hands on the talking knife, Knifey. Knifey grants us the ability to swing around like with a grappling hook, open the chest like aliens called Lugloxes, and obviously to use melee combat. When we finally encounter our target at a platform on top of an acid pit, High on Life shows that it can actually get somewhat challenging, especially on higher difficulties, because not only is there almost no cover to hide from Ninetalk's attacks, she is also moving around really fast, making her not the easiest target. But when we actually beat her, we can bring a DNA sample to the Bounty 5000 with the help of Knifey and complete our first bounty. Then, after a quick chat with our sister and Jean, we head back to the pawn shop to get the Dodge module for our suit. Back home, Jean explains that it's now time to go after the G3 officers, and while you have the choice here, I decided to go after Krubis first. While we fight our way through the jungle filled with critters and G3 members, we come across a colorful bear-like creature, who tells us that his village has been enslaved by the cartel and asks us to help his people. After taking care of their oppressors, the village's leader explains that Krubis is using his people to work in his mines. And while he doesn't know where to find our target directly, he points us to someone who might know. And he does know, so with that information, it's finally time to go after Krubis inside of one of his mines. But before we actually get to meet him, we meet the receptionist Helen for the first time, who asks us to do some paperwork. Now after actually fighting Krubis, which I found to be easier than Nine Talk to be honest, we get to take his shotgun-like Gatling with us, who also grants us the ability to shoot a metal disc at enemies or at certain walls, opening up new ways to traverse again. With the G3's mining facility without a leader, it's time to go after their chief of training, Douglas. Our lead brings us to a Wild Western style settlement named Old Town on an asteroid, but to get to Douglas we need to find a way into Town and into the G3 training facilities. To get inside, we need to cover ourselves in alien body fluids named goop, so they would recognize us as one of their own. Once inside, we have to take part in and complete their training course in order to get deeper into the facilities. Here we come across an octopus-like alien named Dr. Joopy that tries to save his family, but needs our help to travel through the pipes leading there. When we arrive at Douglas's office, we find out that our 8-armed alien friend actually is our bounty. But after a chaotic boss fight, with traps and enemies spawning in and Douglas warping around the room hitting us with projectiles, we get to bring our second G3 related bounty back home. And on top of that, get his Gatlian Sweezy. Sweezy not only works like an SMG, but is also able to shoot a bubble that slows down the time for everything inside. Back home we get to see a press conference of the politician Clark, who addresses us directly asking to join forces against the G3 and their drug empire. Jean tells us that he already set up a meeting with him, and we get to head there immediately. In his office, Clark tells us that taking out the G3 is in his best interest, as he can't do much without bending the law and getting himself in trouble, so he offers to feed us any intel he comes across, and further gives us a special device that allows us to teleport humans we come across to a safe haven. Now after a quick little stop at the pawn shop to get a jetpack module for our suit, and telling our sister that going out with her alien boyfriend is not the best idea, we get to chase after our next bounty, the so-called Scrandle brothers. While fighting countless G3 members inside of the labs, we find the modified Gatling called Creature that is able to shoot little blue guys. Those can be used to attack on their own, get to places we ourselves can't reach, and activate buttons or things like that. His alternate fire mode can also shoot a purple guy that can control an enemy that then fights for our side for a certain amount of time. Now back to our targets. We find each of the brothers separately, but each time right before defeating them they take off. But when we find them again, this time all together, we get to finally actually fight them to the end. And this fight, with the limited space and the amount of different attacks the three throw at you, is by far the most difficult fight in the entire game in my opinion. But after successfully dealing with all three of the Scrandles, we get to head home once more. Here Jean argues with our sister, this time with her alien boyfriend being present, even though he seems more interested in the snacks in our kitchen. But we don't really have time to think about what is going on between the three, as we are supposed to go after the man researching the G3's warp technologies, Dr. Giblets. The doctor apparently is the easiest to find, as he never really leaves his lab, and on top of that, according to Jean, we are supposed to get our hands on a very powerful Gatlian there. So the only thing we need to do is to find out how to get to said lab, and to do so, we are allowed to use the suit's detective mode and question people around town. While doing so, our search brings us to the High on Life store, where the devices to smoke other species are being sold. Here we get our hands on a pair of magnetic boots from someone that has been trampled during the drop of High on Life's newest device. Further, we also meet two yellow aliens that seems somewhat threatening, until we get back to our house where the two are waiting and explaining that they are working with politician Clark. We are asked to meet him in his office once more, where he tells us that the election is close and it would help him if he would take out Dr. Giblets. And while he insists on not being able to officially tell us what to do, he leaves the data for the doctor's location on the table, finally giving us the chance to progress. Inside the lab we reach after fighting through the jungle once more. We find out that Dr. Giblets did experiments on other species, including Gatlians. And when we finally find the main man himself inside what seems to be a storage room, He gets startled by us, falls from a chair he's standing on, hits his head, ending the boss fight. We then fall down into his base, where several waves of enemy attacks begin, with a pre-recorded message from the doctor explaining his life. Upon leaving, we get our hands on a grey Gatlian that seemingly had to endure a lot of experiments and isn't responding to us as of now. Back at the base, Jean promises to try his best to fix our grey guy, but first we gotta look for our sister as she's been missing for a while. Before we leave to go to the Applebee's where her boyfriend works, Kenny asks us to leave the other Gatlians with Jean. At the restaurant, we get told that Tweak hasn't shown up for work, but instead of leaving, Kenny suggests getting a table anyway. Here, Kenny reveals to us that he is responsible for the G3 finding out about his species, causing the downfall of this planet. Because he teamed up with the smuggler that crashed his ship on their planet. And the reason he is telling us this now is that the grey Gatlian we found is his friend Let's Do It, who already knows the truth. Right after that revelation, we witness our sister pulling her boyfriend inside his space RV to run away, which he still doesn't seem to be too fond of. On our way back, the G3 attacked Blim City, so we have to warp again. Kenny gives Jean some coordinates that bring us to his home planet Gutless. On the next day, Jean gives us a new shield module for our suit and tells us he was able to track down our sister's location. We teleport into their space RV, where we find her arguing with her boyfriend, ending with them breaking up and our sister coming back with us. Back in our living room, Kenny reveals the truth to the other Gatlians, and aside from Creature, the others are obviously very angry. Despite the group's terrible mood, we need to find the Earth coordinates, so we can strike back as soon as Jean gets Let's Do It back on his feet. Apparently an alien called Nipulon, who owns a smoking lounge, has what we desire, so we once again disguise ourselves as G3 members to gain access. When we reach his office, we meet Helen again, before getting to face Nipulon. Halfway through the fight, he uses gas on us that makes us hallucinate. Inside those trippy dreams, we have to solve some riddles, talk to some people we met, and fight Nipulon. And from everything in this game, this fight is definitely my favorite scene, especially the part where we get to use all of the Gatlians at the same time. Anyway, upon defeating Nipulon, we get the coordinates and head back to see if Jean was successful, which he more or less was, because Let's Do It is alive, but not able to say anything other than his name. But despite that, we can finally go after the head of the G3 cartel and free our planet. We walk back to Earth and Jean gives us an explosive device we need to place inside the cartel boss's body to defeat him. With the help of Let's Do It, the final part is not too much of a challenge anymore, and we quickly get to insert Jean's device into Garmanta's chocolate starfish. But because the remote detonator doesn't work, we have to choose one of the Gatlians to manually detonate the device. And luckily, unlike the cartel leader, the Gatlian survives, Earth is safe again, and the game's story ends right here. Now, while High on Life won't win prizes for music and art direction, the game's atmosphere and art style still perfectly underline the game's satirical tone. And while the story itself is nothing groundbreaking either, the creativity in the comment sections, with different types of talking weapons, chaotic fun and challenging boss fights, and the traversal actually feeling versatile unlike the classic wall-climbing sections of almost every action-adventure of the last 20 years, Squanch Games managed to create an experimental shooter game that feels like one of those obscure PlayStation 3, Xbox 360 era games in the most positive way. So if you watched until now, first of all, thank you for that. If you have the time, I would really like to read about your opinion on the game and its mechanics in the comments. And if you liked what you saw, maybe consider liking and subscribing if you don't want to miss any future videos. And I hope to see you next time.